had one more video planned. This one, I've tried to avoid this one because this one is going to come straight from the heart. I mean, it really is. I don't even know how to do it. So I'll just start with it. What does Georgia basketball mean to me? This is a question. Somebody sent me a line. It's like I got to answer this for some. I got to answer this, and I will. What does Georgia basketball means to what does UGA hoops mean to me? And this game, this team, and it's the same with baseball, and it's the same with football to a certain extent. Football season runs in with basketball season. I'll be really into football for about September and early October. But when we get to the middle of October and November, my mind is on basketball, Georgia basketball, 24/7, 365 days a year, 24 hours, 7 days a week. My mind. So anyway, as I was saying, Georgia, my life literally revolves around University of Georgia basketball. So I love it very much, as you could tell. But to go in depth of what this team means to me and what this program means to me, this team, I don't like to use the word team because it could be the 2022 team, the 1981 team, the 1965 team. I love to use the word program. This Georgia Bulldogs basketball program means the absolute world to me. The game of basketball means the world to me, in all honesty. My basketball story is very weird. My first basketball love was around 2016 with the Atlanta Hawks. I remember 15-16 watching their playoff run. That's my little taste. I have watched a few Georgia games before that. The first Georgia game I'm old enough to remember listening to is the 2011 Georgia Mercer game. But 15-16, the Atlanta Hawks basketball run, they beat the Celtics, and I think they lost to the Cavs in the playoffs again. That was the second year in a row they lost to Cleveland. And then 16-17 rolls around. I watched every Hawks game, and then with Georgia basketball, I remember watching a few more Georgia games than I did the year before. But then this is where the love story starts. It's the SEC tournament. I am at I am at the local school recreation department or something like that. It's something for the school. I was like at the learning center. And this was when Georgia played South Carolina in the SEC tournament, and Georgia won that game at the very last second. And I listened to the entire game on the radio. And that game, we did not leave that place till 3:30 in the morning. But Georgia won the game. We listened to the entire game, and then the radio cut the coverage off. So that's where I started to get a grasp for Georgia basketball. I already knew what it was before. I've watched a few games, but that is like, okay, I won't do this more often. Back then, I didn't have a phone or an iPad or computer, so I didn't really know when they played. So I just had to be really lucky to watch them play. And then 2017-18 comes along. That season was really great for me. I was heartbroken. Their season ended against Kentucky in the SEC tournament. I remember listening. I listened to the entire tournament run. I know for a fact I listened to a few conference games. Heartbroken, man. But then 18-19 rolled along. And I listened and watched more games. The 4-game stretch, and I just posted these games of Ole Miss, or LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU. Those 4 games, and it started a little before that too. But those 4 games the heartbreaking loss at Auburn versus Auburn in the buzzer beater game. Chuma Okeke hit the buzzer beater. The heartbreaking Mississippi State game, where the plush toy got thrown on the court, and then the two games versus Ole Miss and LSU. Georgia just could not do anything in the last few seconds, and they lost. It was over then. That made me a Georgia basketball fan. One, just like the football team, it made me love this team, and then all of that came with success against Florida at the O'Connell Center. They got their second straight win versus Florida at the O'Connell Center. I watched every game from that ending, and then listened to. I actually listened to the last 8 or 9 games of the year. I listened to the Missouri game, the South Carolina game, and then the Missouri again in the SEC tournament. I listened to it, and I actually cried when the radio team signed off in 2018-19. I mean, that's how much that 2018. I did watch a few games before 2018-19, mini games, but mostly before the 18-19 basketball season. My love for basketball, it was like 60% Hawks and 40% Georgia Bulldogs. My love for basketball would then switch to where it is still now, the Georgia Bulldogs over the Atlanta Hawks. And then 1920 rolled around, and it was the same. I watched almost every game. I still loved football more than I loved basketball. The most notable game, I actually missed the Vanderbilt game because I made a promise to somebody, and I actually kept that promise and did something with them the whole day. So I did miss the Vanderbilt game, but I remember watching the Ole Miss game. I remember listening to the Georgia Southern game, the Texas A&M game. I remember watching both the Auburn games. I remember being really mad I wasn't able to watch the Florida game that came on CBS. I remember listening to the Arizona State game. I vividly remember. My favorite memory, though, of what I'm talking about here in 1920 was the Maui Invitational Tournament. I watched the Dayton game. I wasn't able to watch the first half of the Michigan State game, and then out of nowhere we turn on Georgia's competing with number 1 or 2 Michigan State. They did lose close. That game, that was a great game, and then unfortunately we missed the Chaminade game because it was on Thanksgiving night. So my favorite game that year would probably be that stretch of games or the Auburn game. But yeah, and then look, man, 2020, 2021 changed everything for me. Not only did Hawks make the Eastern Conference Finals, but that it would be where I would watch and listen to a lot of these games, and then that's it. There's no more basketball. I loved it while it happened, and then that's it. 2020, the 2020-21 season put me where that was it. I loved Georgia basketball more than I loved football. I still loved football. And don't forget, I didn't mention this, in 2018 I started watching Georgia baseball. That's a story that's a topic for another video, though. But 2020-21, and that's also, I had a Facebook account, and it's like my entire Facebook feed would be nothing but UGA basketball, man. I made these post-game videos, the ones you see on my channel now. I started making them after the 2018 Mississippi State game. The one at the plush store, 18-19 Mississippi State game. I made a few post-game videos in the 1920 season. Unfortunately, the ones from 1920 and 18-19 are now lost. I have no idea how I could ever retrieve them. I probably won't. I did have footage of the SMU game from 1920. The live stream we did. It was a great stream. It was fun. I still remember everything about that game. And then the Mississippi State game in 18-19. So I still have those videos, but they're just unfortunately lost. I don't know if I'll ever get them back. That's a shame because there were some really good videos in there. I had one where Georgia beat Memphis in 2019-20. It was on my older YouTube account. Unfortunately, it got deleted, but then anyway, to continue our story, the 2020-21 season rolled around, and then this is when I started enjoying basketball more than Georgia football. I still love Georgia football, do not get me wrong, but this was like Georgia basketball for me. Like, this is me. Like, this is what I love. I love Georgia football because I grew up into it and everybody else loved it. Georgia basketball I found on my own, and it's something I love, man. I listened to all their non-conference games that year, and this was also the first year I started listening to 30 minutes pregame, the game, 30 minutes postgame. So this was the game I started listening to every single hour, minute, second of the radio coverage, which helped a lot too along the way. George just, I'll save that for another video too, but. My favorite game this year, I know you've all seen the reaction, the Kentucky game from 21. I was a very unfortunate 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Most of the games I remembered were losing to Kentucky. I mean, the 17-18 game, they blew the lead. 16-17, they came back, tied it, and then blew the lead. And then 19-20, they had Anthony Edwards, and they still couldn't get the job done. In 2021, PJ Horn hits the game-winning layup, and wins the game. One of my other favorite games that year would probably be the Northeastern game. I listened to that game in the back of a car, and the most famous thing, the most notable thing from that game would be he hadn't scored in a million years. That's what Scott Howard said when Northeastern went on their scoreless run. Man, they went scoreless to about 8 minutes to go in the second half. Say maybe 7. And that's what he said. They hadn't scored in a million years. And then the Missouri game. I only missed 2 games that year. It was the Arkansas game and the Missouri game. Unfortunately, Georgia. I did get to watch I take that back. I did get to watch the ending of the Missouri game, but I missed the Arkansas game in total. Other than that, I watched every game that year. I have a lot of post-game videos from that game as well. So if I'm gonna get around. I'm gonna post some of these old videos I have on Facebook and whatnot. On Facebook, I have 2020, 2021, and I have 21, 22. And that'll lead us until that season. That will lead us until, and then in 2021, okay, well, let me start back. I'll start the off season. After the 2021 season, I started, like, okay, when's Georgia's going to find their schedule? I didn't know what the D1 docket was at this time. So when their schedule, I would make videos of when their schedule got released and whatnot. And then the 2021-22 season rolled around, the infamous 6 and 26 season. This was the season, like, everybody hates to lose when it comes to sports. Like, losing is bad. But this season made me love this team even more. And then it was in 21-22, that's when I decided, okay, you know what? Schedule leaks. Talk about this team all daggum day. I mean, if you see me on a 24-hour stream, 90% of it or 80% of it will be Georgia basketball, then other sports and anime with that. Just overall want more and more from this team. That's the 21-22 season. The Memphis game. The most notable games for me for this season are the losses. The Wofford game, the Gardner-Webb game, the Texas A&M game, and then most notably the Auburn game where Georgia was leading number 1 Auburn. And that Auburn game, a lot of Georgia fans talk about the Alabama in 18 being in football being their worst heartbreaking moment. My heartbreaking moment is that 21-22 Auburn game, because the years before, never seeing Georgia beat an opponent like that. Because let's be real, before, still now, when Georgia plays a number 1 team, they usually roll over and die. And then that team, the 21-22 team, doing that, going at home, playing the number 1 team Auburn, Bruce Pearl, wonderful head coach, did playing them like that. And that's what made it crazy. That Georgia team did that. The same Georgia team that lost to Wofford at East Tennessee State and Gardner Webb did that. Everything. I didn't mention this. Multiple weeks before this, they played Virginia. They almost came back and beat Virginia. If they would have had 10 more minutes, they would have won that game. But it's just crazy. It's like this Georgia team is doing that. They're taking number 1 Auburn to the wire. I mean, are you kidding me? And to me, that's what made it special, was the fact the worst Georgia team, arguably the worst Georgia team in school history, 03, 04, would probably have something to say about that 04, 05 too. That was the team. They only had like 5 wins or something like that. So they had one more win more than them, but they didn't play as many games. That Georgia team took the number 1 Auburn team and only lost by 2 at the end. That game still haunts me to this day, and until Georgia beats the number 1 team, it will haunt me forever. It will haunt me forever. It's just like how Georgia football fans feel about the national championship game in 18, how they feel about the 2012 SEC championship game, how Atlanta Braves fans feel about last year's playoff run against the Phillies. I mean, I can go on and on. That's that for me. I mean, like, that I didn't speak for the rest of that night. And a lot of people don't know my post-game video was the second one done, because I had a first one done outside when I had a complete mental breakdown about that game. I chose not to post that because that would have not been right. The season then ended versus Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament. They lost to Vanderbilt 3 times that year. Did not get me started. And this team cost me some tears, man. I mean, I remember crying or tearing up. I mean, after the Arkansas post-game video. And the thing is that I didn't cry because they lost. I cried because I genuinely, horribly felt bad about the players and coaches. I mean, it was not fun at all. But and then 22-23 rolled around. I found the D1 docket. I was on schedule information. And then this basketball season, I was on schedule information like crazy. I mean, I was like, there was not a person online that broke Georgia basketball scheduling like I did. I broke the A&M game, the North Florida game, the North Alabama, the Alabama A&M game, all the little non-conference games. I reported it first weeks before people reported it. And you're like, and I did not, and I did it because I broke these games like that. And I know people got annoyed about it. I mean, people on SEC Rant and any other website got annoyed about it. And to me, it's like, if I was doing this for Georgia's football team, you would be loving it. Or you're just mad that I'm doing it. I'm doing something I enjoy. I mean, and that's not a personal shot at anybody. That's just how I feel about it. But I did not do it for attention. I do not do it for... Anyway, what I was saying is that I do stuff like this. I break schedules. I write articles on these games because I genuinely love this game. And now you know my story. It's like, dadgum, he really loves this team. I legitimately love Georgia basketball very, very much, man. It literally is my life. I will get in fights with people in real life and online over this stuff. I mean, it's serious to me. I love it. I love UGA basketball. I love every player. I love everything about Georgia basketball. Georgia basketball gives me, and I hate to say this, Georgia basketball gives me that new metal feel. When new metal came out in the 2000s, it was like only everybody hated this for a certain people. That's what University of Georgia basketball is for me. It's a cool vibe. It's like, you know what, if you're at Stegman Coliseum, you've paid your money's worth. You're cool for supporting the basketball program a program that's always took a back seat to the football program and always will. And I have trouble with that because if Georgia's football team went 1-11 and Georgia's basketball team went 31-0, people would still be talking about the football team. And it messes with me, but unfortunately that's the case. So I love this basketball team. This team has done so much for me, and it's about time I start doing much for them. I tried to give them the positive recognition online like I'm doing right now, but I mean financially I will start trying to chip in with NIL, equipment any way I can in the future. But as of right now, just me being able to, I don't like to brag. And I do give my man Georgia Sports Network a shout out because he does do University of Georgia basketball highlights. I am the only person on YouTube that does Georgia basketball. I'll sit here and give you a 20-minute video on this UGA basketball team. I'll do videos on UGA basketball. I am the only person online that does and talks about Georgia basketball for a living. Or for content. I talk about it for a living. And people act like, okay, where he's only online. No. I talk about this team offline. I am the same way online, offline. I talk about this team for hours. I talk about this team for days and hours. I literally know more about this team than any other thing in the world, man. Who played for Georgia in 50s? Zippy Marco. Who name five players from the 90s? Jermaine Jones, Derek Dukes, Shannon Anderson, G.G. Smith, and Christian Nordine. I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like, I know my history with this team. That's how much this team means to me. So before you guys, talk, Georgia fans don't care about basketball, you absolutely must have never met me, because this team is my life. I love this team very, very much. I hope when I die and I'm in heaven, I have a Georgia. I hope I have a basketball hoop beside my whatever heaven dorm or whatever it is. That's how much this team means to me. I love UGA basketball, and I will always love Georgia basketball. Is it hard? Man, absolutely, it's hard sometimes. There's sometimes the San Jose Sharks are playing, and Georgia plays in the same night, and it's like I really want to watch the Sharks, but I got to watch Georgia because that's my squad, man. I love them. And Georgia might lose by 50 points, and San Jose might win by 5 points, and you're looking at it like, dang, go back, and I believe that happened. But at the end of the day, man, I love it. It really hurts during like the end of the NBA season. It's like I really want to watch the Hawks, but Georgia plays too. It's like, and you know what? I've said it before, and I was thinking I've never made a wrong decision. I am so happy, George. I rock with UGA basketball because it first of all it changed my life. I mean, it really did. Listening to the games on the radio changed my life too. It changed how I viewed all radio and all that. So there's that side of the story. There's that side. And then it's like I just really love this team. As I said earlier, I'll try to get some of those old videos. I have a complete game from 2020 I know I could post against Jacksonville State. That was one of our first streams outside the SMU game. That was one of the official first streams we did. It's about 2 hours long. It's the game in a nutshell. I cut the microphone off during commercials, but I'm gonna end it with this, man. I love Georgia basketball. I love Georgia baseball too. That's a story for another day, though. I will make a video on that right before baseball season starts. Because my Georgia baseball story probably is just as interesting as the basketball one. And I love Georgia football too, but I mean, you're not going to see here. No offense, nobody cares how I became a Georgia football. And to me, that's what's important too, is that Georgia football team, I love them, but they could survive without me. Anyway, while I was thinking that Georgia's football team could sacrifice, they could live without me. They'll be fine. To me, the basketball team, I gotta be there. And unfortunately, I've never been able to go to a Georgia basketball game. I mean, I was only in high school. I mean, I still kind of am technically in high school, but I can't drive. I just had surgery. And there's all kind of personal family reasons why I've never been able to go to a UGA basketball game. Hopefully that'll change one day. It would be absolutely my dream come true to go, win or lose, in Georgia fashion. The only game I get to go to, they'll probably lose. No, I'm just joking. But Georgia's football team could live without me. I'm being serious. They don't need me. Like, I'm kind of useless compared to Georgia football and its fans. I'm kind of useless. Like, they have 1,000 fans. I'm not needed, and sometimes that it definitely hurts because it's like, well, I love football too. I mean, I love to talk about Georgia football too, but I don't like to use the word useless, but I'm kind of useless because there's other people, and B, they've lived without me for that long that they definitely can forever. I mean, I'm not needed in the Georgia football community. It's like nobody drops their phone to hear, oh my God, like, nobody enjoys hearing what I'm saying when it comes to Georgia football, so I guess that kind of sucks, but when it comes to UGA basketball, I mean, it's important to me. I feel like I'm needed because they don't have any fans. For every 500 Georgia football fans, there's only be like one basketball fan. I hate that's the truth. Stagman Coliseum sometimes can prove that, where there's not many people there. There was not many people there Saturday versus Alabama A&M, and the football team playing on the same day. You get where I'm going with that. So I feel like it's more important to me too. It's like I can sit here and talk 2 hours about Georgia basketball and actually enjoy it. I mean, but man, when you just start talking Georgia football for 2 hours, man, it's just like it's gonna be the same thing, repeating yourself. Brock Bowers ran for 500 yards a game or something. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, to me, I just use that word. I'm not needed. I'm useless, and I'm not needed when it comes to Georgia. And Georgia football fans don't like me anyway. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. But I'm definitely not needed when it comes with Georgia football. So that's what Georgia basketball means to me. It means so much to me. I love this team. And when the day comes that this team wins the SEC tournament or national championship, that probably will be the happiest day of my life. I mean, over my wedding, if I ever get married, over having kids. That will be the greatest day of my life. Because I'll look back when I was 13 to 14, 15 years old, and it's like, man, I really stuck it out with that team. I went through all that crap, harassment online, losing seasons. I went through all of that to finally see them win. I'll say this, if they ever win the SEC championship, that's good enough for me. They did win it in 2008. Unfortunately, was not young enough to remember that, or not old enough to remember that. I was so young. But to me, that's what this team means to me. It's my life. I love them very much. So we'll end it with that. Thank you, Georgia basketball. Thank you, all the former players who has played. I've got to talk online to a few players who've played for Georgia. J.J. Frazier, Kenny Gaines, Hansard Williams. My goal is to get everybody who played in the 90s and message them and talk about how much they mean to me because they really do. They set the foundation for what will happen under Coach Ron Jersick. People hate him. I love Coach Jersick. I believe he's a great coach for Georgia. Unfortunately, he got fired for Jim Herrick. And then after Herrick, Dennis Felton, so really Tubby Smith, Ron Jersick, Dennis Felton, Mark Fox, Tom Crean, and now Mike White. I just want the guys to know who played under these guys, hey, what you did means a great deal to me. Thank you for doing it. But, yeah, man, I'll end it with that. So, Georgia plays Missouri tomorrow, and you already know I'll be watching. You already know it's like, well, when he's saying all that, yeah, he'll watch the Missouri game. So, hey, I'll end it. Let's go dogs. Let's go hoop dogs. And, yeah.